It is time to check in on the race for the White House. Grahame Morris and Bruce Hawker, our political strategists, here with us. We'll talk some Australian politics too, but let's start with Donald Trump once again, because we've heard, Bruce Hawker, to you first, a lot of tough talk from Donald Trump on foreign policy matters. He's now sat down for a couple of very lengthy interviews with the New York Times, apparently about a 100-minute interview where they've gone into a lot more detail on what he's actually talking about, what he actually would do on various foreign policy challenges. Do you think it's any clearer? And what would a Trump presidency mean for Australia and for the world?
I think it is a little clearer now, David. I think he's got a user pays policy as far as foreign affairs goes for the Americans. And, you know, there's probably some support for that proposition because, you know, they've spent a heck of a lot of money over many, many years being the world's policeman. And there's been an emerging view, I think, for some time that certain countries haven't been pulling their weight when it comes to, you know, the threat of ISIS and other terror outfits, particularly in the Middle East. So I think we're going to see that as being a feature of his foreign policy stance, make others pull their weight. And I think that'll be quite popular with the American electorate. They probably do think that they've been spending a huge amount of money at the expense of health and education and other services in order to perform this function. What does it mean for Australia? Well, probably because Australia always is out there side by side with the Americans. Very little. Australia, I think, if he were to become president, would be regarded as one of the nations that does pull its weight when it comes to these issues. So I think it'll be. I think some of it, you know, is going to just get lost pretty quickly. Things like, so, yeah, go on.
I was going to say, and Grahame, to you on this, when it comes to some of the trickier foreign policy questions, Israel, Palestine, North Korea, dealing with Russia, he sees everything in a negotiation sense, doesn't he? It's all about getting a better deal for America.
Well, I thought this is where he was always going to look silly. You know, when you listen to him, he's essentially saying, we don't need mates anymore. You know, Saudi Arabia, you're going to look after yourself. We're not going to, presumably Israel just disappears. Japan and South Korea, well, you go and develop your own nuclear weapons, presumably so you can fire at China or North Korea or vice versa.
Good idea.
You know, this is the sort of policy you have when you have, say, a real estate agent, Yogi Bear and Daffy Duck trying to organise a foreign policy, but unfortunately the steadying hand of Daffy and Yogi are missing and you're just left with Trump. It was really, really dangerous. And for Australia, you know, I don't like isolation America. We saw what happened during the war when we have America saying, hey, none of our business. Well, you know, the West needs a champion. It happens to be America, and if it withdraws to its own little boundaries, goodness knows what happens to the rest of the world.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. A lot of the media focus in the US right now, though, isn't picking through the entrails of foreign policy. It's dealing with this extraordinary and grubby campaigning going on between Trump and Ted Cruz, the two main contenders for the Republican nomination. Let's have a look at the tweets over the last week. So it began with this one, and it's a bit of a mystery. I think it was from a super PAC, this first one, about Donald Trump's wife. Meet, is it Melania Trump? Your next First Lady, a rather provocative pose from a magazine shoot years ago, or you could just support Ted Cruz on Tuesday. So Trump obviously thinks it's Ted Cruz behind this. He then tweets, Lion Ted Cruz just used a picture of Melania from a GQ shoot in his ad. Be careful, Lion Ted, or I will spill the beans on your wife. Ted Cruz responds, pic of your wife, not from us. Donald, if you try to attack Heidi, you're more of a coward than I thought. On it goes. This one, a picture is worth 1,000 words. This is the picture of both wives, a rather unflattering one of Heidi Cruz there. And then Ted Cruz responding to that, Donald, real men don't attack women. Your wife is lovely and Heidi is the love of my life. Trying to settle things down a little bit there. I mean, you can see, Grahame, why the media's having a field day with all of this when the two of them are just going hammer and tong like this on social media about each other's wives. It's just extraordinary, isn't it? Grahame?
Well, I think it's just terrible new development. But nothing else has surprised me about these two candidates in the Republican Party. The Republicans, look, if I were there, I'd always vote Republican. But this time you think, oh, do I really have to? You know, the choice is just terrible. And this sort of stuff where you now involve the wives, you know, I understand why it was done to try and shake Trump up, and, you know, there'd be a lot of conservative people who think that the, you know, the First Lady should not be lounging around with very little on a bed having a picture taken for the front page of the Boys magazine.
But Bruce, is the more substantial issue here how the Republicans are going at winning back female voters, and what is this sort of stuff, you know, from both candidates, but particularly what Donald Trump has said over some time now with various you know, derogatory comments that he's made? This is going to be a problem.
It's got to be, and you know, the likelihood, of course, is that the Democrat candidate is going to be a woman. It's going to be Hillary Clinton. So it's not going to take too much for women to want to vote for a female candidate anyway, without these two characters attacking each other's wives in the way in which they have been. Look, it all just points to the reason why there are people in the Republican establishment now who are saying maybe we should actually be intervening in some way if we can, if there's no clear majority when it comes to the convention in July to install somebody else, or maybe we put up a third party candidate. They're even talking about putting up an independent, effectively, to give you know, right-minded Republicans something to vote for, or someone to vote for, if it's not Trump.
Well, that just guarantees Hillary Clinton a win, though, doesn't
absolutely it does, and I guess that's what they're saying. We would rather see him lose than lose control of the Republican Party. That's how bad it's become there. It is, you know, it is quite bizarre. None of those photos, by the way, are going to affect the voting intentions of the rusted-on Trump supporters, but they're going to have a very significant.
Nothing seems to shake them.
Nothing.
Just
nothing.
On the Democrat side, there are actually three bigger than expected wins for Bernie Sanders over the weekend. I think it was Hawaii, Alaska and Washington State. He says, this is the quote, that he's now got a path to victory. Bruce, does he really have a path to victory?
Theoretically he does, but it's going to be extremely difficult. He'd have to get 58% of the vote going forward across the remaining primaries. And, you know, the things you've got to look for in these states is how affluent they are and how ethnically diverse they are. The more affluent they are, the more likely they're going to vote for Sanders in a primary. The more ethnically diverse they are, the more likely they're going to be to vote for Hillary Clinton. And you've got a number of big states still to come in. You know, California with the big Hispanic vote, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. There are some big ones there. I can't see it happening myself, but I think for the next 2 or 3 primaries he'll probably continue to do quite well, but it won't be enough to get him there.
He's hanging in there, which shows you how bad Hillary is. But look, the only way he gets the nomination is if he poses nude on a bed in a lads magazine.
Guaranteed to get them.
Grahame, let's turn then to local politics. Arthur Sinodinos, he is denying any wrongdoing. He's called in the lawyers. This is all about the Liberal Party donations ahead of the New South Wales state election campaign back in 2011. He was the party honorary treasurer at the time, and the Electoral Commission have now withheld $4.4 million in funding to the Liberal Party in New South Wales, which they badly need for the federal campaign, because of the alleged washing of donations to get around the laws in New South Wales through the Free Enterprise Foundation. Grahame, how much trouble do you think, if any, Arthur Sinodinos is in here?
I haven't seen the law yet, which says if you didn't know, you're guilty. I think this whole thing is stupid. You know, we have a retired judge in New South Wales deciding on New South Wales law what is something to do with federal law. The Free Enterprise Foundation was set up more than 30 years ago. You know,
but it was only used in this way at that election.
But if people, you know, if people give money to your bank, and you give $50 to the bank, do you really think you get the same $50 back? It's the same here. New South Wales people gave some money to a federal organisation. Some money came back. Was it the same money? No, it came out of the pool.
Oh, but I don't think there's much doubt about what's happened here, though. I mean, this foundation normally gets, I think it's, less than $100,000 from various donors. Then New South Wales introduces laws that says property developers can't donate, and suddenly the Free Enterprise Foundation gets something like $700,000.
What happened was not against the law, and Arthur should not be pilloried for it. And I noticed earlier on Sky, we had Senator Dastyari, who knows all about the buried money. You know, he's dancing around on one leg because he knows damn well that the Labor Party's McKell organisation the 1973 foundation, the whatever that progressive business organisation is the same thing. It doesn't declare all of its money because some people say, oh, look, I'd like to give to free enterprise or I'd like to give the trade union political party.
But what about if property developers like Meriton, Westfield, etc., do donate big dollars to this foundation to get around the New South Wales
and people
ban?
give big money to the McKell Foundation and all that sort of stuff.
Have these property developers washed their money like this to get around the laws? I mean, this is what the Electoral Commission has found, right? That they've instead of giving the money to the Liberal Party, which is banned against the law, they've put it into this
to the federal money, like you give money to a bank,
and then it comes back to the state.
Oh well, yeah, I still reckon it's the same. If you give money to a bank, $50, do you get to say $50 back, or does it come out of a pool?
Well, okay, but if you put $50 in my bank account and I take it out, I'm pretty sure where it's come from.
No, look, I reckon if you saw Dastyari, he could hear the canary in the mine. And he knew damn well that, geez, I hope the Labor Party doesn't go too bad on this because we're in trouble too.
All right, and look, if Arthur Sinodinos as the Treasurer didn't know about it, then he's clear. But Bruce, that's the key here, isn't it? Well, he's always denied that he knew anything about these donations.
Yeah, although he was copied in on all the correspondence that was going on. And so it's pretty hard for him to say he knew absolutely nothing about any of this, what was happening. And you're right, David, it was a washing machine that was being put in place there. The old Westinghouse was brought out, the money was clipped in, washed it all out and out. Some to New South Wales.
Does Labor ever do this though, Bruce?
No. Not to my knowledge, and when there have been instances where people who are developers who have tried to donate to the Labor Party, they've been stopped from doing it. It's clear what's happening here. And by the way, the Australian Electoral Commission retired judge that Grahame's referring to was the former Chief Justice of New South Wales, who I think has a pretty fair idea about what federal law is and what state law is, because he's expected to deal with both in his role. So let's be no doubt about about the capacity of Keith Mason to make an informed decision about what's happened here. I think Arthur Sinodinos is in a fair bit of trouble, and he just seems to attract this sort of trouble all the time. It's been an ongoing problem ever since those first ICAC inquiries. It hasn't gone away. More stories come out about people, albeit without his knowledge, saying we should all put in and buy him a house. For heaven's sake, what sort of talk's that? You know, this is the Cabinet Secretary we're talking about here. Not good. Not good.
Just a quick one finally on Tony Abbott. Now, you're both campaign specialists, and Bruce, you know, we saw what happened in 2010 after Kevin Rudd got the chop and the awkwardness of how to use him in that campaign. To both of you, how would you use Tony Abbott for the Liberal Party in this campaign, Grahame?
I'd be saying to my candidates, do you want a fundraiser? And there would be 7 or 8 who'd say, yeah, I'd like Mr Abbott to come to my electorate to raise some money and to get me onto the front page of the newspaper. There would be 90 odd who'd say, no, thank you.
And so, okay, limit it to those 7 or 8 where he would actually help.
Yeah.
You think it's about 7 or 8?
Yeah.
Bruce?
Well, you know, it's very interesting. I mean, I've spoken to people who are Liberal, dyed-in-the-wool Liberal voters who are still very sympathetic towards Tony Abbott, incredibly sympathetic towards him. They say, oh, now there are 2 Labor parties running, you know, in Canberra now, one run by Turnbull, one by Shorten, and we've got nowhere to look. I actually think that they could probably deploy him in places, provided he quite effectively to try to bring back that base. I don't know that it's really got anywhere particularly to go apart from vote for Turnbull or the Liberal candidate, but I think if it looked like that there was a genuine rapprochement as against the fake one that occurred between Rudd and Gillard in 2010, if they thought there was something genuine about it, then you know, I think there would be a role for him. I think the problem is he really wants to see Turnbull fail, and I don't think he's going to be playing ball. That's the bottom line.
And what you've just said there, I guess, goes to the point that however genuine a rapprochement might be, there'd be plenty of people who would seriously doubt it, would never believe it. We'll see how that all pans out. We've got to go. Bruce Hawker, Grahame Morris, always good to talk to you both. Thanks very much. We'll catch up next week.
David.
Quick break.